Trump has detailed and well-founded plans to end Ukraine war, says Orban. Likely outcome of Trump victory means EU should reopen diplomatic talks with Moscow, says Hungarian PM Viktor.
Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos.
This Hungarian PM Viktor Orban has claimed that Donald Trump has detailed and well-founded plans for peace between Russia and Ukraine in a letter to a top EU body that is likely to inflame tensions about the Hungarian Prime Minister's diplomatic freelancing. Orban, who met Trump at his Palm Beach compound last week, said in his letter to the President of the European Council, who organizes meetings of the bloc's 27 national leaders, that the Republican presidential nominee was ready to act as peace broker immediately after his election. The likely outcome of a Trump victory meant that the EU should reopen direct lines of diplomatic communication with Russia and high-level political talks with China, Orban wrote in the letter addressed to the Council's president, Charles Michel, which was first reported by the Financial Times. The Guardian has seen a copy. The Hungarian Prime Minister said Trump's likely victory would mean that the financial burden of supporting Ukraine's war effort would shift to the EU's disadvantage. I am more than convinced that in the likely outcome of the victory of President Trump, the proportion of the financial burden between the US and the EU will significantly change to the EU's disadvantage when it comes to the financial support of Ukraine, he wrote. Orban also said that after his recent talks with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, the Chinese President, Xi Jinping, and the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky, the general observation was that the intensity of the military conflict will radically escalate in the near future.
Let's take a quick pause. Could you do us a favor? If you enjoy our content, please hit the like button. To help even more, leave your thoughts and feedback in the comments. Your engagement helps us grow. Thank you.
European strategy, Orban wrote, had copied the pro-war policy of the US. He called for a discussion of whether the continuation of this policy is rational in future. The letter emerged after the European Commission took the unprecedented decision to boycott meetings organized by Budapest as part of Hungary's EU presidency. A spokesperson for the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, said on Monday, in light of recent developments marking the start of the Hungarian presidency, the President has decided that at EU Commission will be represented at senior civil servant level only during informal meetings of the Council. That means neither von der Leyen, nor any of her team, including the EU's chief diplomat, Josep Borrell, will attend informal EU meetings in Hungary. Although formal meetings in Brussels and Luxembourg are expected to continue with the usual attenders. The unprecedented snub follows apparent decisions by some EU member states to send lower-level officials to EU events in Hungary. The Commission also cancelled a visit to Budapest from von der Leyen and her team of EU commissioners that was expected to have taken place in the first few days of July. Soon after Hungary took over the rotating presidency of the EU Council of Ministers on the 1st of July, Viktor Orban visited Kyiv, Moscow, Beijing, Azerbaijan and the US in a tour he described as a peace mission that has provoked deep anger among other EU leaders. The EU presidency gives Orban no formal role to speak for the EU. Other European leaders have sharply criticized the visits, in a near-unanimous chorus of disapproval. Slovakia, led by Orban's ally Robert Fico, was the only EU member state that did not speak out against Hungary at a meeting of senior diplomats last week. Responding to the leaked letter on X, the Hungarian Prime Minister's political director, Balázs Orban, who is unrelated, doubled down on the message bound to provoke Hungary's EU partners. Instead of copying the pro-war policy of the US, Europe needs a sovereign and independent strategy with a focus on a ceasefire and the start of peace negotiations, he wrote. Separately, he offered congratulations to J.D. Vance, the hard-right Ohio senator, who was selected as Trump's running mate on Tuesday and is a leading opponent of aid to Ukraine. I don't really care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other, Vance said on a podcast last year. A Trump-Vance administration sounds just right, tweeted Balázs Orban, accompanied by a strong arm emoji. In an interview with the pro-government daily Magyar Nemzet, Balázs Orban claimed Trump was committed to peace and will soon create peace himself if he became president of the US again. If Europe wants peace and wants to have a decisive say in the settlement of the war and an end to the bloodshed, it must now work out and implement a change of course, he wrote. And in a statement likely to deepen alarm in EU capitals, he added, "We are convinced that, in political terms, we should use the entire period of Hungary's EU presidency to establish the right conditions for peace negotiations." Michel, the European Council president, who has yet to comment on Orban's letter, has previously condemned efforts by Hungary to negotiate with Russia, albeit without naming names. The EU rotating presidency has no mandate to engage with Russia on behalf of the EU, he said earlier this month. The European Council is clear: Russia is the aggressor, Ukraine is the victim. No discussions about Ukraine can take place without Ukraine.
If you enjoy our insights, please consider subscribing to help us bring more content like this. Thank you for tuning in. Clicking the subscribe button is a great motivation for the channel. Thank you very much.